everybody, it's Chris and Marissa from Dixieland Farm, and we are going to talk about Disney dining. This is not a simple thing for beginners. It's very complex. There's something like, was it 400 restaurants?
That's a lot.
It's a lot on property, and for you to book the most popular restaurants, especially at the most popular times to travel,
Which is like all the time now.
you at 180 days the window opens, so almost half a year the window opens.
Is that 5 months?
5 months, yeah, so close, right? And literally by the first hour or two, some of those prime restaurants are gone that everyone talks about or wants to get. So there is a bracketing kind of process, a weeding out process that Marissa and I go through, and most Disney fans go through. And it is, we can do it in our head, but we're going to kind of document it out here just for anybody new to going to Disney World or thinks that Disney World is just burgers. It is not. There are very good restaurants on property. There's a Michelin rated restaurant on property.
There's something for everyone.
Right. So
every budget, well, every Disney budget, every taste, whatever it's there.
So part of the process, it's different for us because we are a childless couple, so there's just two of us, and for two people to get into a restaurant is much easier than 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. So the bigger your party, the more important this stuff actually is. Marissa and I can just kind of sneak into a restaurant. For example, you can eat at any lounge. The full menu is available at any lounge, so if you don't feel weird about eating at the bar, which we I guess sort of did at first because we're not drinkers, so we're sitting at the bar but we're eating and not drinking alcohol. But then we realized this last time we went and did that, they're getting a bigger tip than they would have if you just ordered a whiskey sour. They're getting a big tip, so the bartender doesn't care. We don't care sitting next to each other that there are people next to us, especially to get into a popular restaurant. So that is always a good option, is that you can eat at any lounge. You can sneak in. But again, being a couple, that's a lot easier, especially if you're a family with kids. So the first thing to discuss is on property and off property. So Marissa, we'll write that down real quick. And the one thing that you've got to understand is that time is money. You spend a lot of money coming to Disney World. You may or may not have a car, so you'd have to get a taxi to do that. So you've got to consider, is eating off property worth it? The bigger your party is, it might be worth it. If you're not staying on property, it might be worth it. There are a lot of great restaurants in the Orlando area, especially right around the theme parks. There are a lot of chain restaurants, and there's nothing wrong with chain restaurants. They're popular for a reason. They offer a good meal at a good price.
And they're typically consistent from one restaurant to the next.
And for a lot of people, it's a novelty. If you are not from America, going to a Chili's is a novelty. Going to an Outback is a novelty that we don't get, but that's fine. But also, if you have kids that are picky, well, seeing a place that they know is also maybe something to consider, that it's worth it, than going to a new place and trying to convince your child, well, you'll like this. No, I won't. Going to a familiar place. So, on property, off property. Now, typically, even if you had your own car, you're going to take an hour or two just in travel to get off property. And like I said, time is money. So if you spend all the money for your theme park tickets, for your hotel, you've got to factor that in.
So we're doing time?
So, right. So it's going to cost you time, but less money.
Time, but less. Does this need to be closer to the camera?
We can get it, I'll see if it's registering later.
Okay.
So we've got travel time, but less money. Also, less planning is required because it is not a prime item to go to a Chili's or, a Golden Corral or whatever. You're going to need less planning. You're not going to have to say, I'm eating at exactly this time. You can be a little more flexible, and that is certainly worth it. And certainly, I guess, more variety. Well, I don't know.
No, I think the variety is equal at both. It's just, you know, one of the things that we found off property, believe it or not, is some of the restaurants, particularly the times we like to eat, are less crowded and quieter. Like there have been times we're the only one, we're talking the tourist corridor of Orlando. We eat dinner at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and we were the only people in the restaurant. And it was it was a well-known restaurant, but it's just quiet and pleasant. So I'm going to put, they can be quieter and less crowded.
So on property, we're going to have
Location.
location, right? You're in a theme park and there's a restaurant in a theme park. However, you have to be prepared. There is much planning to get into a restaurant on property.
Must make an ADR. And Chris, what is an ADR?
An advanced dining reservation. So that is the 180 days that I was talking about that you can call up Disney if you have a time for your vacation already scheduled. So 180 days from the start of that vacation, you can start planning.
Interesting note, if you are a Disney resort guest, you can make your reservations 180 plus 10, which means at the start of your 180 days, you can then make reservations for every day of your trip up to those 10 days. If you're staying off-site, a rental home, days in, whatever, at 180 days, you can make reservations for that 180 day out.
So day one.
Day one. Then you have to wait till tomorrow, and then you can make day two's reservation. Then you have to wait till the next day, and you can make day three's. So there is a slight advantage, big advantage really, if you're staying on site. You can make your reservations for your entire trip starting at that 180 days. If you're off site, it's 180 days each day.
I'm not sure if that applies to the Good Neighbor hotels, if you're allowed to do the 180 plus 10, and even if we say it's true now, it may not be true later, or vice versa. We're trying to make this video slightly evergreen, so you'll have to check. So the neighboring hotels where you're allowed extra magic hours, things like that, check and see if you apply for that 180 day plus 10 advantage.
One of the nice things about the on-property restaurants is theming. This is not just a Chili's. It's not just a steakhouse. There's usually a story, a theme, an overarching something that goes with it. For example, Boma, you're at an African-style buffet, and it's the whole theme of being in the resort hotel. Or if you're at Cinderella's Royal Table, you're dining in the castle. There could be characters. You could be dining with Mickey or Minnie, or to a lesser excitement, Stitch, or Winnie the Pooh, or princesses, or what have you. So it could be characters and themes. So you're in that Disney bubble, and that's the whole point of your Disney trip, is to be part of the Disney bubble. Things like sci-fi dining. You're dining in a car in a drive-in movie theater, watching old black and white sci-fi movie clips while you eat. So it is a big bonus. It doesn't sound like it would be, but that's a big part of what you're paying for with the increased price. It's also more expensive.
It is. So a buffet, for example, for dinner could cost as much as $50
to $60 per person, depending on the time of year. Like Ohana is one of the hot ticket reservations to get. There are some times of year where it's 40 something, and there are sometimes year you get to that Christmas week, it's going to be about $60 a person. So you just have to keep an eye on the changing price of the buffet based on you're going during spring break, you're going during 4th of July, New Year's Eve, Christmas. Things are going to be a little bit higher.
Now, while it is more expensive because they've got you, travel time costs you part of your vacation. So while it is more expensive, it may have cost you roughly $20 per person to take those hours to travel off property when you could have stayed on property and not gone through the headache of it.
Right.
So you have to factor all that in. So it's not just the price. Just don't go, oh, this thing is $50, forget it. I'm going to go to Outback and spend $35.
Is it worth that $15 to sit in Orlando traffic on the way there, or to get an Uber, to pay for the Uber to go there, whatever, if you don't have a car of your own, etc.
And it might be. Again, it really, the more people you have, the more off-property does look attractive. But we're going to also go over a couple of things about price right now. So with a new sheet.
Is this where I have to make the Venn diagram? Because I'm not good at those.
So on this brand new sheet, we're going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So breakfast is going to be one of your cheaper meals, not necessarily if it's a buffet, but just in general. Lunch will be also cheaper.
Can you go down here?
Yep. And then, of course, dinner is going to be your most expensive meal and probably your most coveted meal. Any normal Disney fanatic will always tell you, save your best meal for lunch because it's slightly cheaper, but the meal is just as good and it's easier to get into restaurants at lunch, especially if you don't eat right at noon. If you eat all the way up to 2 or 3 o'clock.
Or early if you start at 11, or a little bit after, like between 2 and 4, dinner typically starts at 4.
This is going to be your best bet. If you can have a light breakfast, especially in your room, or just in the park, just grab a croissant of some sort of something like that. Save your meal for lunch, and then dinner you can either eat snack around the world or go ahead and get a smaller counter service. Now, the difference between a counter service restaurant and a table restaurant is that the counter service is like a cafeteria. You just order your food, you get it, you go. And you can order mobile now, so you can actually order on an app and just go and pick up your food. These aren't the restaurants we're talking about 180 days. You need no reservations. It is fantastic food. So even if you don't get what you want in table service, there are a lot of great counter service options out there as well. We're only talking about table service restaurants. So there are also, as Marissa said before, characters at some of the meals. Some of the meals are at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The restaurants aren't always the same. They might have a character at breakfast, but not at a lunch and a dinner. They might have nothing at lunch. They might only have a dinner. You have to check each restaurant that you are interested in if you are interested in a character meal.
It depends on, everybody's a little bit different, but for me, I don't want to waste precious park time sitting down to eat breakfast. That's the kind of the magic hour in a theme park, is that first hour before it gets crowded. You can get a lot accomplished ride-wise. So we typically don't like to go to a table service breakfast. The exception being the breakfast buffets, because they do have some really good breakfast buffet options around Walt Disney World. I'm not a big fan of like a normal sit-down breakfast because you can get that at IHOP or Denny's or whatever, but the buffets are pretty interesting. Boma has a great little African-inspired breakfast, as does Tusker House in Animal Kingdom, with the bonus of there being characters. Ohana is family style, all you can eat, and again, a character meal. So
the cheaper character meal.
Right. So if you're going to do a breakfast, for us, our preference is, if I'm going to do a breakfast as a table service, I like the buffets or the all-you-can-eat, like Garden Grill. It's not buffet, it's served family style, but there are characters, Mickey, Pluto, the Chipmunks, etc. We're hopefully going to get to try that this next trip that we do. But otherwise, we prefer to grab something quick in our room and use that first hour for the park, and that's why we try to save our big meal for lunch, because again, when everybody else is eating dinner at prime dinner hour, it's a great time to get on rides.
Also, bonus tip, some breakfasts in some parks are open earlier than the park. You can sneak into the park earlier than the rest of the crowds, thus skipping all the crowds, having a character breakfast buffet that you wanted, and then when you got out, you are first in the line on some of the rides because you got there earlier.
Right, so that's a great thing to do, especially when you have some of these new rides opening. You got like over in Pandora at Animal Kingdom, you'll have the Star Wars stuff opening soon. Anytime you can get a pre-park opening breakfast so that you're done eating before the park officially opens, you're first at the line at that rope waiting to, when they open up the park to everybody, you can get right on those hard to get rides that maybe you couldn't get a fast pass for, or you just want to get multiple rides in on the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train or whatnot. The early entry pre-park opening breakfast are a great way to get a jump on your day and not miss out on, again, that magic first hour, hour and a half of the park being open. So we're going to put here for lunch, make this your big meal of the day.
Of course, this is the way we do it. There are some people that they can't wake up early. We're farmers. We wake up early. We're used to it. And when we're on vacation at Disney World, we get to the park before opening because that is the magic time to get there, because a lot of families can't pull it together that early and get there.
Or don't want to, that they prefer to sleep in because they're on vacation, which is totally fine.
Totally fine. So that's the other part of it. And the third part of it is some people don't feel like they're on vacation unless they're having a big breakfast,
Right.
which is also totally fine. You may want to do it at a park. You may want to do it at your hotel. You may want to do it at a hotel close to one of the parks. All three options are something you can certainly do.
One of the things with dinner, kind of like we said, there's early entry there. Some of the things you want to keep in mind with your dinner reservation, there's some places that you can make a reservation where you can have a great view of the fireworks at whatever park you're in or near, based on where you're dining. For example, California Grill, at the top of the Contemporary. If you're dining at dinner time, they actually dim the lights and pipe the music in, because that one whole wall of the restaurant is windows and you can see the fireworks over the Magic Kingdom. So it's a great, like, dinner and a show. So there are lots of restaurants that you can do that over at Epcot. You might be able to score an outside table at, say, the Rose and Crown, where you're right outside on the water and you have a perfect view of their fireworks right from your table outside, beautiful at night, assuming it's not raining on you. So there's lots of things to keep in mind with your dinner reservation as well, that you might be able to sneak in a show with that.
Now, of course, we're planning 180 days out. Things may change. You are certainly allowed to change your reservations. The most popular restaurants are going to be harder to do that for. However, as with all of this, the more flexible you are with the times, the better it is for you to get those restaurants that you do want. So, for example, Be Our Guest, the big one that everybody wants at Magic Kingdom. So dinner is very popular. It'll fill up quickly. However, if you take your dinner at 4 o'clock, you'll be more likely to get that reservation. Or, same thing, if you instead of you had a dinner, you had a lunch, and they offer similar things. It's not the same menu and it's not the same service at that particular restaurant. That is a unique thing of Be Our Guest. However, some of the best dinners that they have, they actually do have at lunch as well, maybe in a smaller portion.
Really, Be Our Guest, the food's okay, you're going there for the atmosphere. So if you just want to get in to see the place, and I mean, it looks like you just stepped into the movie. That place really isn't about the food at that particular restaurant, it's more about the experience. The food we've had there hasn't been bad, we enjoyed our meals there, but it's more I'm sitting in the Beast Castle and I'm in the ballroom, or I'm looking at the rose wilting in the corner. So
Marissa's going to cut this in half and she's going to write resorts versus theme park. So the resorts have wonderful restaurants, and it will behoove you to look into them. Just because you're at Magic Kingdom does not mean that you have to eat at Magic Kingdom. While I said before, going off property is a time hit, going to a resort that is close to a certain theme park isn't that big of a time hit and is something to consider. So, for example, you are at Magic Kingdom. There is Be Our Guest, which I don't think is the greatest restaurant. There is Liberty Tree Tavern, which is an okay restaurant, and everything else is not great, to be honest, at the Magic Kingdom. However, just a hop, skip, and a jump away, either by monorail or by foot, is the Wave at the Contemporary Hotel, which is a fantastic restaurant, very underrated, right there in the lobby, wonderful food. Same thing with California Grill, maybe the best restaurant on property at the Contemporary Hotel. It is literally a 5-minute walk or a monorail ride over to the Contemporary. The Wilderness Lodge, you can take a boat, lovely little break from the park, and you can go to Trails End Buffet.
that's it, yeah, Fort Wilderness.
At Fort Wilderness. But there's a
Whispering
Whispering Canyon
Canyon.
Cafe.
There's Artist Point, which is one of the nicer, fancier signature dining restaurants that they've got.
Same thing with the Polynesian. There are different restaurants there, and even the quick serve is maybe a little better than some of the stuff that you could get if you wanted a break or just a tour of that resort. So that's just the Magic Kingdom alone. There are 4 different hotels that you can basically get to extremely quickly. Epcot, at the International Gateway, which is backed by France, you can walk to a whole bunch of other hotels that offer great restaurants. Now, Epcot, of course, is kind of known for its restaurants, but if you are tired of those restaurants, or you just want to explore and try something new, maybe you want to hit those
I just
restaurants.
want to point out that, you know, people think of a theme park vacation and food. They don't think of food as being the reason you take a Disney vacation, but for us, it really is. If you're going to Disney and all you're eating is chicken nuggets and hamburgers, you're doing something wrong, unless that's specifically what you or your kids want. This is not a chicken nugget and burger destination. In fact, we have to go out of our way to find a hamburger if we're in the mood for one, because there's just not a lot of them around. You can find them and they're there, but it is not a pizza, nugget, and burger kind of vacation for us. I wouldn't call us foodies, but we enjoy a good meal. I mean, I'm not like a gourmand. I don't need to go to Victoria and Albert's, but you know, the food and the planning is kind of a big deal to us, and we don't eat, you know, the kind of what you would think of as theme park food when we're on vacation at Disney, because there's so many fantastic other choices.
So theme park restaurants are a little harder to get into, and the options may or may not be limited. It depends on the park that you're in. For example, I was talking about Epcot before, and just in case you don't know, at Epcot's broken up into 2 different areas, and one of them is called World Showcase, where there are countries represented around a lake that you walk around. And so you can eat at Germany, France, Japan, China, Mexico, Morocco. And all of those restaurants not only have a counter serve that represents their country.
Most of them have a table service as well.
And most of them have a table service as well. There is not a hamburger option at all.
Except in the American Pavilion, and that's really the one that, for me, has the worst food. It's like, why even bother? Because I can get a hamburger at home. I'm not going to not go eat the awesome German food at the German restaurant, or the, you know, Japanese food at the Japan Pavilion. So, you know, you really have to go and look for a burger if that's what you want. But if you want something unique and awesome and delicious, all you have to do is turn your head, because it's right there.
And in the Future World section, of course, this may be dating the video, was it the Electric Umbrella?
Yeah.
So they offer hamburgers and hot...
That part of Epcot is slated to undergo a major change in the next several years, and I'm hoping that the food offerings in that part are one of the things that are going to change, with the exception of Sunshine Seasons, which is the food court in the land, which has some great stir-fry options and kind of almost healthier. I mean, it's not that you have to go off your diet or whatever. It's not all greasy and whatever, but there are some great salad options. I don't eat salad. But stir-fry and vegetarian, or there's even vegan options. You have allergies, talk to the chef. Any place you go, counter service or at the table service, chef will come out and help you figure out what you can have safely.
So, we've gone through on-property, off-property, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, why we usually pick lunch, resorts versus theme park. So, we're going on to phase 3, the bracketing. This is where Marissa and I are going to hash out, and you're going to get this all kind of edited and chopped up while we discuss live what we're going to do on our next trip. And we're going to talk about restaurants that we like or that we want to go to. Complicating this matter is that sometimes during special events, food now also gets played into some of the options. So, for example, Epcot often has a festival going on, and there are food booths, sometimes up to 25 different food booths that offer food. When we are going is during Christmas time. There are only about 5 different food booths. However, that's 5 different places now to consider that's got unique food being offered.
In addition to all the regular restaurants and stuff. So
also during the time we go during Christmas time, some of the restaurants around World Showcase will offer a package. Also during the year, depending on which theme park you go to, there might be a package that involves your dinner, and then you get admission into, for example, Fantasmic's fireworks. or
River of Light at Animal Kingdom, or what they call the Candlelight Processional at Epcot, which is a big celebrity narrated retelling of the the birth of Jesus, the first Christmas, and with a full choir and an orchestra, and it's amazing. We've seen it several times, and every time is beautiful and moving. But what happens is you book a dinner package, you get dinner, and then they include tickets to guaranteed seating into one of the shows.
so some of the things we have to consider during this process here, and this is what we're really getting to of what our thinking is and why we're even making this video, is one, we've got to consider what park we want to go to on what day, which is always difficult because you don't want to spend your time traveling to a different theme park just to go eat dinner and then go back. So you kind of need to figure out which park you're going to be in, which park you may be seeing multiple days, which park has a special event, and do you need to align yourself for that. So for example, the Candlelight Processional will have certain guest narrators. If the guest narrator means something to us, we may want to be in the park that day. During other festivals, there are live bands, and bands that you actually know from the radio, right, or that you grew up with. If you want to be in the theme park during that day so you can see those concerts, that's when you kind of got to know, well, we're probably going to be here this day and that day. Then there's crowd calendars that we take into account, which we won't bore you with, but there is statistical data that's available if you pay for it, where you can actually see this day might be busier than other days. There are extra magic hours if you're staying on site or at a Good Neighbor hotel, that parks are open later for those special guests. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes we actually take the opposite. Because the parks are open later, those parks are more popular to go to. So it's actually a better strategy to go to a different park that is not having those magic hours because it'll be less crowded. We are annual pass holders. We are DVC members. We go to Disney more often than other people do. So we are fine going from one park, taking a break, and then going to a different park during later in the day. A normal American probably wouldn't do that. They would stick to one park because that is how you maximize your time. Foreigners that are on vacation have a completely different set of criteria because they are typically here longer than the American. American usually is here anywhere between 4 and 7 days, but a foreign traveler is often here for 2 to 3 weeks at a time because it may be couple of years before they come back here, so they actually
there are package deals that they get through their the travel agencies that specifically cater to UK and European travelers, where they get these amazing deals, but it is these 2 and 3 week stays, and they have multiple day tickets, so they will hop around, more often, from park to park.
And they have the option of traveling off-site a lot more frequently. But if they don't have their own transportation, then that complicates things, and they'll have a whole different set of criteria than what Marissa and I do. So that's why nothing is really set in stone. This is how you do it, because everybody is different. Again, we are just two people, and
this is how we do it.
This is how we do it. So we are going to brainstorm. You're going to see us yelling, fighting. We're going to pull out those big inflatable sumo suits and go ahead and add it.
And then in the end, we're going to wind up doing it my way, which is,
Probably.
Okay.